everyone! If you find yourself struggling to improve your photography, you're not sure how to grow and how to take better photos, then in today's video, I'm going to share with you what I think are the 5 most important elements of photography you need to keep in mind to work on to help you get to the next level with your work. And thank you to the Professional Photographers of America for sponsoring today's video. I'll let you know more about them a little later on. The number 1 technique that is going to make or break your photos is the lighting. And this is whether you are using artificial lighting like strobes or you're just relying on natural or available light. Light is super powerful in photography and has the ability to completely change the mood, style, and look of your photos. And this goes for any genre of photography, from portraits to landscape photos. And I have 2 main tips to share with you about lighting today. The first is to be aware of what the lighting looks like in the scene you're about to photograph. Instead of coming across the location you want to shoot and just clicking away, you should analyze the scene first to see how you can best use the lighting to your advantage. For example, I did this photo shoot at the beach and I knew I wanted to take backlit photos because I'm going for a dreamy style with these photos. The sunlight is reflecting against the water and I decided to take 2 different kinds of photos. One where you can see the water shining in the background by placing the subject beside it. This gives me a balanced photo where you can see more of the location and the subject is nice and clear in the shot. The second look, I placed the subject right in front of the water reflection to get a more artistic photo where we have more haze on the subject instead. When you look at them side by side, you can see what a huge difference the way I worked with the same lighting in different ways makes to the photo. I do have a whole video that goes into more natural lighting techniques with portrait photography that I'll leave a link down below if you want to watch. My second tip is to make sure you get to your location in time for the right lighting. What I personally find works really well for me the majority of the time is I like photographing landscapes during sunrise. This is because the light is super soft and usually a nice warm color. In the mornings, landscapes typically have more serene conditions, there's more chance of seeing wildlife, and there are not many people around that can get into your shots. I then usually like to do street photography during the day, or if I'm doing a portrait session, I like working indoors during the harshest light of the day. And finally, I love doing portrait sessions outdoors in the afternoon. Your subjects have plenty of time to get ready, the light is softer in the afternoon, and even if there are more people around, it doesn't really matter since you usually only need a small area to work with for your portrait locations. The next technique to keep in mind is composition. This is something I not only use for my portrait and wedding work, I also rely on very heavily when doing photography out of my niche of portraits, such as sports, wildlife, and landscape photography. And strong compositions will make your photos look better because you can emphasize what's important in the scene. So these are a few things to keep in mind. One of the most common and easiest things to keep an eye on are lines. Make sure any strong lines like buildings, poles, the horizon line are either straight or crooked on purpose. I do it so much where my photos are crooked straight out of camera by accident. It happens, but I always make sure to correct that in post by fixing up those lines. It just makes your photo look so much more professional. Next is to either fill the frame as much as possible or use negative space in an intentional way. Negative space means the empty space around the subject of an image. If you leave some gaps on your photo that have no purpose, it's going to make your photos look unfinished. I find it's so much better to get up nice and close to your subject to fill the frame and bring emphasis to them. If I'm going for a more artistic composition, then I will purposely step back and leave negative space, and this can be a really powerful way to bring attention and frame your subject. Finally, with composition, I would recommend for you to take lots and lots of photos by moving around while you're shooting to utilize different angles. For example, your first instinct with taking photos would be to take them from eye level because it's comfortable and that's how you're looking at the subject or the scene you're photographing. However, you can sometimes capture much more interesting images by getting low to the ground and shooting from there, or getting up high and taking photos from a bird's eye perspective. There are so many ways and angles to work with, and by capturing these different compositions, you will find a unique viewpoint to share and have a variety of photos at the end of the shoot. So I want to let you know more about the sponsor of today's video, PPA, aka the Professional Photographers of America. If you're a photographer, PPA gives you access to essential photography resources from workshops to webinars. You can get the tools you need to succeed as a small business, such as customizable contracts, marketing templates, and legal resources. As a member, you can enjoy not having to worry about gear damage or loss with up to $15,000 worth of equipment insurance with deductibles for either repairs or a full replacement. Whether you are a beginner or a pro, you can use the tools at PPA to improve your photography and grow your business. If you want to join PPA, please be sure to use the link in my description to get a discount on your membership. Something that can be overlooked in photography is the why. I always like to ask myself a few questions before I take a photo or go to a photo shoot. Why am I taking this photo or doing this photo shoot? What am I hoping to achieve and capture? What or who is my subject? Why am I taking photos of it or them? Asking myself a few simple questions like this can help align my expectations for the photo session to make sure I'm focusing on the right goals for my images. And I still do this to this day. The reason this is so important is because different photo shoots have different aims. You might have been hired to take headshots of someone because they need to update their actor or modeling books. With these questions, you can go into the photo shoot knowing exactly why you are taking these photos and what kind of photos you want to have by the end of the day. The aim is totally different when you're traveling, for example, and you're going to wake up early to take sunrise photos. Here, these questions will give you answers like, I'm doing this photo shoot to try something out of my niche to help improve and grow my skills. For this shoot, if I come away with some good images, that's a bonus, but the most important part is to head to the location and practice my photography. So you can see how different both those scenarios can be, and I find that if you know why you're doing something, you're more likely to end up with results that you're happier with. My next tip is about equipment and making sure you understand your gear. The reason I think this is really important is twofold. First, you want to make sure you know how and when to change your camera settings, so things like shutter speed, aperture, ISO, autofocus settings, and things along those lines. Sometimes the best moments happen very quickly, and if you know how to use your camera well, you can easily capture it in the best way possible. If you're not super confident with your camera settings, then I have videos about this. I recently uploaded a video about the best autofocus settings you can use in different situations, and I have a video about how to shoot in manual mode for beginners. I'll leave them linked in the description. The next way you should be familiar with your camera equipment is with focal lengths. Choosing the right focal length is a skill, and different lenses have a way of affecting the scene and your style of work. For example, you can make the same landscape look completely different, whether you decide to photograph it with a wide-angle lens or you instead decide to take a photo with a telephoto lens. The same goes for portrait photography, where a wide-angle lens like a 35mm is going to give you extremely different results to a 135mm. My best advice is to practice shooting with different lenses to see what suits your shooting style and what kind of final images you are most happy with. Finally, a really important aspect of photography to learn that doesn't involve a camera at all is editing. And this is one of my favorite ways to add the finishing touches to my photos to be able to present them in the best way possible. While I do love to do some creative editing with my work, editing doesn't always mean you need to completely alter your photo. Sometimes even a simple crop and a tonal balance goes a very long way. This is what I think are the minimal tools needed to edit your photos to take them from raw, straight out of the camera to a polished image that's ready to print or post. First things first is the crop. While it's important to try and get your composition right in camera, as we were just talking about, sometimes I accidentally capture crooked photos that need straightening. Maybe I thought my composition looked great at the time, but when I take a look at the photo on my computer, I realized it could have looked a bit better if I framed it in a different way. So you can use the crop tool to adjust and fine-tune all of those settings. Next are the tones. If you have a camera that supports RAW, I would highly recommend you shoot in this mode in order to be able to recover as much information in your files as possible. While this photo looks fine as a RAW, if I am going to be sharing very natural images to my clients, which I would normally do if I'm documenting an event, for example, then at the very minimum, I will make sure the exposure is correct for all the images, and I will balance out the shadows and the highlights. photos. Moving on to color. White balance also makes a huge difference in what your photos look like, so it's always important to adjust this as well. I find you can use white balance in a realistic way to make images look more how the scene did in real life, or a creative way. For the creative edit, we took these photos on a beautiful golden hour afternoon, and I really want to exaggerate that nice light we had, so I'm going to increase the white balance to make the photos warmer. So as you can see, you don't need a huge amount of editing knowledge and experience to take your photos to the next level with editing. With some simple tools like cropping, tone, and white balance adjustments, you now have finished photos ready to post. So I really hope you learned something new today, and if you want access to business tools and equipment insurance, don't forget to use the link in my description to check out PPA. And thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week, so I will see you all next time. Bye!